Okay, welcome to Inhale Life Conversations from the Chicago Asthma Consortium, your go-to podcast for bringing awareness, insights, and hope to the journey of understanding asthma and respiratory health. I'm your host, Dr. Sharmili Nienhuis, a passionate advocate, physician, and researcher who believes that every breath is an opportunity for transformation and connection. Join me today as we delve into inspiring stories, cutting edge research, expert interviews, and community perspectives around the fight for healthier lungs and healthier lives. So today I am so excited about having my two guests with me today. Um, we have two really wonderful people who I've known for probably since the beginning of my career and have really helped like shaped my perspective on asthma. And I feel like I both have like isms from things that they say. Like when I'm talking to my patients, I'm thinking like, oh, Kim said this or Dameka said this. So again, just very excited to have both of these women on the podcast today. So our first guest is Kim J, who is a training manager, consultant, and senior community health worker, or CHW. We'll probably be using that term a lot today, CHW, because it's just short for community health worker. But she works at Sinai, Chicago, as well as the Sinai Urban Health Institute, and also works within the Center for CHW Research Outcomes and Workforce Development. Our second guest today is Dameka Edwards-Hart, who is a program manager of community health workers here at the University of Chicago Medicine for both the Southside Pediatric Asthma Center as well as Liaisons in Care, which is a community health worker program for other chronic conditions as well. And we're having both of them come on today to talk about the community health worker CHW role in asthma. And it's really pertinent because later this month, the Chicago Asthma Consortium is hosting a community health worker forum, the first of its kind, and it's really focused on asthma. So we'll have a link on the website on how to register for that if you are interested. But we are really excited to be hosting this community health worker forum this year and later this month. So first of all, I want to start off with you, Kim. Can you share a little bit about your background and what led you to be a community health worker focused on asthma care?
Well, this is always an interesting story because when I began working for as a community health worker, I left a corporate job. I was an accountant with a pretty prestigious firm downtown, and they laid me off. And I was like, what do I do next? Because I knew that the next thing I did as a career pathway would have to be something I was totally connected to and really enjoyed every day. And community health work found me. And that was about 14 years ago. And when I came into the profession, it was through the avenue of pediatric asthma. And we would see patients in clinic. And then because the rate wasn't changing much in the repeat returns to the ED, we added the layer of meeting patients in their home. And that's where the gold was. That was where the connection really was enhanced because we got to see people where they were, where they live, where they thrive, where they relax. And we were able to connect with them and see what was going on at home so we could really put the dots together to help them manage their asthma. And that was the most successful intervention approach because it reduced those asthma visits to the ED by 84%.
Great, thanks. I kind of forgot about how exciting your path to community health worker was. And Dameka, can you tell us a little bit about how your background and what led you to be a community health worker focused on asthma care?
Sure. So, similar to Kim, I can't say that I was in corporate, but I was working for Chicago Public Schools at that time, and I was just looking for something different. So I thought that I wanted to go into the corporate world sector, but I wasn't having any luck there. So my best friend sent me a flyer and it was for a 1 day informational. And so I go to Sinai for this informational session and they were talking about asthma, asthma this, asthma that. And I'm like, okay, I don't know why I'm here. The only reason I stayed is because I have asthma myself. So there was a lot of information that I learned at that informational that I found interesting. But I was like, okay, at the end of this, I'm gonna tiptoe out of here and go home. Here I am, being my inquisitive self, asking questions. And I was asked to stay for an on-site interview, and here I am, many years later. And so this work has become a passion of mine, and it is important for me because I am able to touch my community. And so, being able to work with people that have asthma that come from the community in which I grew up and still have family residing there is a great honor. So that's me in a nutshell. And I started my career. So I left my first position at UIC and came over to U Chicago, where I've, grown in my career. So that's it.
Hey, that's really great. So again, not everybody may know, what a community health worker does. I mean, you talked a little bit about being able to go into the community, go into the homes, but can you guys tell me, like, what does a typical day look like for a community health worker in asthma care? And Dameka, do you want to start off? And then Kim, you can jump in.
Sure. So, typically, well, what I would do when I was seeing patients is my calendar was my best friend. So I had everything on my Outlook calendar, down to, if I needed to drop supplies off to a patient, things that we would talk about with the patient, even their SMART goals that we created during past visits. So I would come in, see what it is that I have to do that day, set my day out, get everything that I needed to get in place, make my phone calls and my check-ins with my patients, and I would hit the door to go see them. And that's pretty much the day in the life. It's a lot of like case management, so you have to be very organized. You have to make sure that you are building a relationship with your patients. You want to make sure that they trust you enough to get into their home because that really is key. If the patients find that, they can't trust you, they won't allow you into the home. I had a colleague that would say, people won't care what you know about until they know that you care. So I feel like that is the core component to being a community health worker. And that is something that I would carry with me day to day.
And I'll go ahead and add to how that interaction happen with patients. Really, post COVID, the approach has been modified a lot because a lot of patients weren't able to come in when COVID happened. So we had to go really telehealth kind of approach to connecting with our patients and making sure that they were okay. But that also gave us a broader reach for who we could connect with outside of our typical base. But the beautiful thing about uh, being that community health worker and working day to day with your clients. It could be via telephone, but it can be in clinic. It can be at the home. But it's almost like how the Burger King slogan used to be have it your way at Burger King. So that was equity way back then. We just didn't give it a name, but having the approach be applicable to the need of the patient. So we are very nimble to be able to say, okay, this interaction could be a telehealth or a phone intervention. This needs in clinic today, right now, or this can be a home visit. But it really reaches the patient where they are and it gives them what they need that's applicable to their pathway to being healthy. And really, health is more than just a condition. It's the mental connection, it's the social connection. And it's about making sure that all those needs are met. And we give them under that umbrella of social determinants of health so that they can achieve that degree of health. And again, it could be a very uh, specific approach, or it could be um, an a la carte kind of approach to what they would need in achieving that health.
Yeah, I really loved how you both indicated, like, first again building trust, but then also personalizing, that outreach. So kind of seeing what they need and You know, some people may need, you know, 5 things, and some people might just need 1 or 2 things. So really being able, again, to tailor that approach to that person. So, okay. Could you guys tell me a little bit about like what are some of the most common challenges you face while you're supporting individuals with asthma? And Kim, I don't know if you want to take this one first.
Well, when you're visiting clients in their home and you see things that need to be done or changed or modified, um, and you really can't complete that task to fulfillment because we don't have access to better housing or those issues, or move them out of a maybe an abusive situation. Because when we see people in their homes, we see their entire lives, not just their asthma condition. We see everything that they're dealing with. So some of the things that we know need to change but are outside of our scope is challenging many times about supporting our clients and supporting their avenue to wellness. Um, that and making sure that they have all the pieces to being healthy, all of their devices, money for medication regularly, because that can shift. So we find it kind of challenging sometimes to break away from a patient because of those challenges. So sometimes they become lifelong patients, or those that you support because of their complexity of their lives and what they need. So that for me is one of my challenges that I see. Dameka, I'll pass it to you.
I would have to agree, Kim. I would say one of the biggest challenges that especially now, right, that we see within our program is housing. And it's tricky because, on the one hand, we're telling patients, it's key and important for you to identify triggers within your home, right? Because this is where you live, this is where your children play, this is where you're going to spend a good amount of your time, right? But if they're in a home and they have a lot of environmental triggers inside of the home, and this is whether they rent or own, it's really difficult for us as CHWs to, help place them someplace else, right? We've dealt with, and Kim, I'm sure you've dealt with this too, where we will have to like fight with landlords. Because I mean, unfortunately, let's just, be honest, some property owners they only care about, that one time a month where they receive funds for rent, right? But they're not thinking about the fact that they have a person in their home. They have a tenant that could, face life-threatening issues if they're not, if they don't change things around in the home. So of course, there's a lot that you can do as an occupant, right? As a resident, as a tenant. But sometimes we need that additional assistance from the landlord to help, like remove the carpet, because we've identified that carpet is a trigger for the patient. And then another thing too is helping families understand that sometimes their pets can cause triggers as well, right? So helping them navigate through their fur baby, having the fur baby in the home, but helping them understand why they need to put certain parameters around the animal. So those are some of the biggest challenges that I've seen in my career.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, you both overlapped on talking about housing and some of the other, social, aspects. And I think, I always think that, asthma is very unique, or asthma and allergies is a very unique condition because the environment plays such a critical role, whether in potentially the development of the disease, because there's, research to show that, but also in the management or control of disease. So I think it's just a really unique factor, a unique thing that needs to be addressed by anybody who's like addressing their asthma, whether it be the nurse in the clinic, the physician or clinician in the clinic, community health workers. And I think that's what's so great about, you know, having community health workers that can go into the home, whether it be virtually or, in person, to have those eyes and then let us know as the providers, because unfortunately we don't do home visits anymore. And I think it's just such a huge component of how we can manage, because I can tell somebody to take, prescribe away on medications, but if they don't have access to them, or, there's mold all in their house, it's not gonna have much of an effect at all. So kind of moving on a little bit from, some of the challenges that you guys have faced supporting, but, again, you guys have probably talked to lots and lots of patients with asthma and communities. And so, what are some of the misconceptions people have about asthma that make your work more challenging? And I know, Dameka, you maybe talked a little bit about that with the fur babies, but I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
I remember when I received my training at Suhi, which I can't believe that I forgot to mention. But Kim, I remember you saying all the time, you would hear people talk about how, oh, I don't have asthma anymore, or it's gone away, or I didn't really have asthma, right? And so you will not believe how people really think that this is a fact. And so I hate to break patients' hearts when I have to tell them, unfortunately, asthma is a disease, right? It's something that you can't outgrow, but you also can't catch it like a cold, right? Like you can't sit next to someone with asthma and, they cough and all of a sudden you have it too, right? But that I use that opportunity to connect a patient to pulmonary, right? Oftentimes we see that a lot of our patients, they have a PCP and that's great, right? But I also help the patient understand why seeing an allergist or a pulmonologist is key in managing your asthma, right? So the way I like to describe it is we're all one big team. Okay, so you have your PCP, and your PCP learns a little bit about most things, right? But your specialty doctors, they learn everything about this one specific illness, right? So that's how I'm able to help them understand that you can't get a proper diagnosis from just the PCP, right? Because you need the spirometry and pheno testing. You need lung function tests to find out the severity of your asthma, if you have asthma at all, right? And from there, you can create a plan. So I would say what makes it challenging is, listening to our relatives from back in the day who, you know, don't necessarily have full understanding of the disease, right? But it's also sometimes difficult because we hold true to we hold a lot of the things that we learn within our own families to such high regard that it's kind of hard to like will things back and learn something new that you've been taught, most of your life. So I would say that that's one of the things that's been a little difficult with dealing with patients. Now, of course, we overcome, right? But I may have to do a little more convincing the family, like pulling up information, right? And showing them that this is a hardcore fact, that I'm not just trying to say, hey, I'm not saying your grandma is wrong in all things, right? I'm just saying that, there's a couple of things that we need to relearn, and here's why. The goal is to, help you breathe better every day and not have difficulty breathing, because some people believe that difficulty breathing, oh, that's just how they breathe. Well, no, this isn't normal, right? So I would say that can sometimes be challenging.
I'm just gonna say I agree with going against the grain of generational remedies when you're trying to teach somebody how to take care of themselves. Drinking black coffee was one of the biggest ones I heard, or breathing in a bag. Um, one of the biggest things also is on the other side of that. Is you want people not to be around tobacco smoke or live with rodents and things like that. But if there's a child in it, and they are the one with asthma, they can't be away from their parents. You know what I'm saying? Or you're encouraging someone to wash their bedding at least every 2 weeks or once a week, depending on their severity, but they don't have the capability of doing that. So that can make it challenging when your recommendations go against the ability of the patient to execute those beautiful recommendations that you have for them that really prevent them from being continuously ill. But those home remedies and and I believe in God like the next energy, but people, God got me. You know, He's gonna take care of me. So you can keep your medicine. And it's like, okay, I have to really find out how can I bridge the gap between that, and I have to come with that faith without works is dead. So let's exercise a little work so that faith can come into play that you're exercising. So it's about uh, combating generational beliefs, um, religious beliefs, and then trying to get people in a better position of being healthy that is contrary to their living conditions that they have no control over.
Yeah. So, Kim, I'm just going to probe a little bit more. So, and Dameka too, like, how do you, it seems like it probably you have to chip away at doing that. It's not just, okay, say it once and then move on. So, can you tell me a little bit more, kind of like how, you chip away at some of those misconceptions?
Absolutely. I think that the biggest way to chip away at it is to show people that it works. What you're encouraging does work. And you allow them time to absorb that and say, okay, what you said was true. If I uh, go out, if there's a smoker in the house and they are encouraged to go outside, it does make the inside environment a bit better for the child and even the person, the adult who may have asthma. The way you chip at it regarding even keeping, not using fragranted fabric softeners with your clothes. Maybe just use it in the wash cycle, and that'll give you the same kind of comfort and smell that you want. You know, trying to make little edits so that people don't feel like you're stripping everything from them. Not only do I have asthma, now you're asking me to do this. Well, I got to give up everything. So it's about making small compromises because, you know, little victories lead to amazing outcomes. So it's like let's try this and then we'll talk about the next thing. So baby steps and keep so you can keep that trust, you know, let me be able to still come in that house or call you on the phone. And when people see what you're encouraging works or is factual, then they're more likely to take on some of the other things or go against the grain of some of those mental blocks of what they've been used to achieve that different level of health and it's a mental thing too for them. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And go ahead, Tamika. It looks like you want to add something.
Kim, you are spot on. I especially like with regard to autonomy, right? Even when I was working with children, right? I wanted them to understand like you have autonomy over your body, right? You have agency over this. So I would ask questions like, well, what would have to happen for me to convince you to take this rescue inhaler everywhere you go? What would I have to do to convince you to, get this lung function test, right? And so kind of putting the ball in their court, right? Because one, I don't want to be too pushy. Okay, now of course, there has been situations where I have to, like say, okay, we have to take a hard stance against this, and here's why. But because I was able to build trust with the family and the patient early on, it sometimes make it a little easy. But I will tell you, the hardest thing to convince people to do is like to either stop smoking outright or even smoke outside. Like I've been faced with things like, well, this is my house, you know, especially if my patient and their like caregiver lives in the home of another relative. Well, this is my house. I'm not gonna go outside or I'm not gonna do XYZ. So now I'm introducing third hand smoking, explaining to the family what third hand smoke is. And believe it or not, I was able to get that aha moment from a lot of people that still wanted to smoke in their home, right? Especially doing that in-home assessment where I would say, like, look at this picture here, right? Let's move it over a bit. You see how there's discoloration behind the picture? I'm sorry, on the outside of the picture versus behind it, right? And so this is third hand smoke. helping the family understand, like, when you walk into a home, people may not be smoking, right? But you smell it, right? Someone walked past you, they're not smoking, but you can smell it because smoke lives in the walls and in our clothing, even in the fabric in your car. So that's one of the ways that I'm able to convince people to kind of change some of their behaviors. But my first thing is to start with them. All right, I hear you, right? And ask and do those motivational interviewing techniques, because I feel like when people understand that I'm not trying to be too pushy, I still want them to have, full autonomy over their behaviors, over their day-to-day activities. I feel like that's another addition of trust. So
Yeah.
And if I could just add this one last thing, people enjoy things being done with them and not to them. And that's key.
Yeah, I was gonna just add, you're kind of tying it up, is that really this concept of incorporating or involving them in the problem solving as well as that, that decision making. So it's not just like you said, Kim, you're just telling them you have to do this, making sure that you're working with them and within their means, like you said too. Um, so I know we kind of talked about a lot of like misconceptions and barriers. So I just want to kind of bring it around to, successes. So if each of you can share a success story about a patient you've worked with who made great progress in managing their asthma, just so we can see, again, the benefits of working with community health workers. Kim, would you like to start?
Okay, so for me, and I hope I can hear you because there seems to be a little bit of a glitch, but um, I had a patient who the entire house, everyone in the house had asthma. The mom, the grandchildren, the children had asthma. And when I went to this house, this was one of the homes that had the most deplorable living conditions I had seen in a very long time. Where in the bathroom, I went in there because I heard running water and the warning for a long time because there was black mold all in the house. I went into the kitchen. I could see to the backyard from the floorboards in the kitchen. And when I looked to the basement was filled with water, right? And I'm like, what is going on here? And so I asked the mom, I said, I see all these things happening because again, I don't want to disrespect, I don't want anybody to feel shame. So I was like, what's happening with the house? Why is the water running? Well, I don't know how to turn it off. I said, well, where's the turn off switch? I'll do it. It's inside the wall. To make a long story short, I was able to work with this mom with MTO to get them moved out of this place. This place was, she was afraid to talk about the issues really because she didn't want to be evicted because she had her children and her grandchildren, and there were about 9 of them in this 3-bedroom house. So they did not want to lose a place to stay. But I just reminded them that you deserve to have reasonable accommodations. And it's you won't get evicted if you talk about those things. But also if that comes up, you have support to counteract that. But as I said, I was able to work with MTO, which is the Metropolitan Tenants Organization, a free entity in the state of Illinois that works with tenants to help them mitigate some issues like that. So we were able to find them housing somewhere else. And they were so gracious all the time, even in where they were living. They learned how to use their asthma medication. They learned how to use their spacer. They learned about their triggers because they didn't realize why they were so sick. I say because you're living in an as in a mold infested environment and the moisture as well. So that was one of the hardest because it was housing, but the most rewarding because we were able to get that immediate assistance because of the children, because of those conditions. And as a result, that family is doing absolutely amazingly well. Everybody. So that was really a beautiful moment because they did not realize everything was contributing to that. But when they found out and knew that there was help, not only for the asthma, but for how they were living, it just saved a lot of energy. It saved hope. And it gave that family just a reassurance that people really do care.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. It's really impactful.
I would say for me, one of the stories that I love to share is about I had a high school he was in high school. I met him when he was a freshman, and his mom, so he was a football player, and his mom would, they were frequent flyers to and from the ED a lot. And come to find out, the reason why is because he did not want to disclose that he has asthma to his football coach. And somehow he convinced his mom to not say anything, like to the point where he would not even take his inhaler to school with him. And so, really, really sweet young man. But he was like, Miss Dameka, like, I can't, like, I'm going pro, and I don't want anything to stop me. And so I would explain to him, like, well, you have asthma. Asthma doesn't have you, but let me explain to you why I need you to be on top of your medications. And so we would go through triggers. We would go through all of these things, and believe it or not, physical activity was one that was one of his triggers, including grass, right? So you are a football player. You are running up and down this field and you are playing on grass, right? We need to do some things about this. So his mom said, okay, this is what I'll do. Again, giving him autonomy, right? I'm going to give you to the end of the week to tell your football coach, but I need you to make sure you tell him. And so he's like, Mama, please don't make me do it. Mr. Mika, please. Well, I don't want you to come to my house no more, Mr. Mika, because, basically he was saying that they had a good thing going, and then here I come trying to turn things upside down. Well, that day came and went. And so I had a home visit. I was dropping off some medications to them. I knew he wouldn't be there, but I saw his inhaler on the dining room table when I walked in and gave his medications to his mom. I took his inhaler to his school. And, with mom's permission, right, she called and she's like, okay. And I had a conversation with the football coach. The coach called him down and explained to him, like, he asked him, like, what was going on? And the look that he gave me, he was so upset. And the coach said, I want you to be okay, right? Like, you can't be a top player if you're not properly taking care of yourself. So he was okay after that. He was mad at me for a little while, but I got to see him graduate high school. He is, I believe he's still in college now. This was a couple years ago, but he was on his way to Northern. And so really was really excited to see him overcome. And he was on top of his medication. He would even stop mid game if he needed to take a couple puffs. So that was a big success story for me because I helped him understand that you can still live a full active life with asthma. We just have to make sure that we are properly medicating ourselves and identifying triggers.
Yeah, those are really both great stories. So thank you for sharing those. So I'm gonna just start to wrap things up. So our last question is really, how can listeners as well as other people in the community learn more about asthma and support the work of community health workers like you? So Dameka, I don't know if you want to start.
So the great thing is community health workers are starting to be, we're starting to get more recognition. So I know I can speak for Kim when I say this. We are so excited about that. I do want to start there. But we have the Southside Pediatric Asthma Center for the University of Chicago. So people can go to southsidekids.org to see all of, we have all things asthma on their website. So we talk about triggers. We can connect you to doctors. We talk about ways to eliminate exposure to triggers and what to do if you are in an environment with triggers. We have information on medication, how to properly take it. And so that's definitely a great website. It's great resources there as a whole. And another way to support community health workers is just to be on the lookout for the things that we have on the rise, right? Making sure that we are sharing content on social media platforms that talks about community health workers. And so those are some of the things that, people can do to support CHW.
And along with that, regarding how do you find out more about community asthma and that material, I think the Chicago Asthma Consortium is an amazing spot to visit to find information and videos and one pages regarding asthma. The American Lung Association is another space that has really great one pages regarding how to take medication, the physiology of your lungs, and what asthma is. And also within our organization, Sinai Urban Health Institute, we have an asthma intervention program that is also available, but it is through your physicians, through our clinics. However, when it comes down to what can you do as a person regarding supporting community health workers, it's about telling your story. If you've ever encountered us in your healthcare journey, and even asking your clinics, do they employ community health workers? Because you've heard such great things about them and you would love to have them connected to your care. And just be an advocate. Even the CHWs need a voice. They need someone to stand up on their behalf. In Illinois, we're looking towards CHW certification, and we want to make sure that all CHWs are included in this number and can be uh, reimbursed for the great work that they do with our community members. So if there's ever an opportunity for you to share your perspective or to be vocal or even to sit in on a panel, please do that because your advocacy is needed and very much appreciated.
Hey, great. So I wanted to again thank both of you so much. It was such a pleasure to have you both here. And just kind of as a little disclaimer, I always like to say, this podcast isn't intended to provide any individual medical advice to our listeners, and any questions that you have pertaining to your own health should always be discussed with your personal physician. I just also wanted to do another shout out for the Community Health Worker Educational Forum that's happening on June 27th from 1 to 5 at the Sinai Health System Glasser Auditorium. And you can go to the chicagoasthma.org to sign up. We have a lot of great speakers and activities and giveaways even that's going to happen. So again, we hope you've enjoyed listening to today's episode. And again, please visit chicagoasthma.org for any pertinent links from today's conversation. Thank you again for listening.